Have you ever stopped to think that all this feeling of being lost might actually be a sign that you should never have tried to fit in? That this anguish, this emptiness that sometimes seems to crush your chest, is not your fault. It's because you weren't born to follow anyone else's path. I know it sounds strange. We live in a world that screams at you to find a mentor, copy someone who has made it, follow ready-made formulas, and fit into patterns that seem safe. But what if that safety is exactly what holds you back? What if being like everyone else was the real prison? When I think back on my own journey, I remember those days when I felt like a leaf lost in the wind, without direction, without an anchor. I would look at the people around me, who seemed so confident, so determined, and I felt invisible. It was as if I were watching a movie where all the characters already knew the plot, except me. The colors of the world seemed faded, the sounds muffled, and even the air felt too heavy to breathe. But in that solitude, in that silence that almost suffocated me, something began to change. I realized that I didn't need to copy anyone, nor follow the footsteps that the world insisted on showing me. In fact, I had never had to follow a ready-made path. My path had to be made by me, with my own steps, stumbles, and discoveries. It was a slow and painful process, but it was liberating. With each small achievement, a different thought, a decision that was unique to me, a new courage, I felt a little more life returning to me. And with it came a deeper understanding. Life is not about finding a place where you fit in, but about creating the place where you can be your whole, authentic self. This is the key I want to share with you. Maybe you are not lost. Maybe you are exactly where you are supposed to be, on the threshold of your own freedom. If you are beginning to realize that even in small achievements, there is real growth happening, I invite you to take an important step now. Subscribe to the channel to follow this journey of discovery and transformation. Here, we will celebrate each advance, no matter how small, because that is exactly where true change lies. Like the video to reinforce this message and help others who are also seeking their own path. And take the opportunity to leave a comment telling us about your small victory today. Your story may inspire someone who needs to hear it right now. Together, let's transform this feeling of being lost into a path full of learning and authenticity. I remember, as if it were yesterday, a night that left a profound mark on my life. I was alone in my room, the moonlight streaming through the curtains and casting a pale glow over the walls. The silence was almost palpable, a silence so dense that it seemed to fill every corner of that empty space. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand the whirlwind of thoughts that were swirling around in my head. At that moment, I felt like I was in a place between the world and nothingness, where no answers came to calm the restlessness inside me. Everything seemed disconnected. The distant sound of cars on the street, the heavy breathing, the heat rising and falling inside my chest, the smell of the pillow that seemed so familiar but brought no comfort. It was as if I was invisible even to myself. I looked at social media, at photos of people who seemed to have their lives organized, with plans, dreams, and certainties. And me, I felt as if I was paralyzed, as if I had no map or destination. A strange feeling of not belonging anywhere, of not being made to follow the same steps as others. That emptiness was not just a lack of answers, but a deep doubt about who I was and what my place in the world would be. I felt a huge weight on my chest, a tightness that took my breath away and made me want to disappear. My thoughts were a jumbled mix of fear and frustration, and I wondered if I would ever be able to find myself. That night, the room seemed smaller, the walls closer, and time seemed to drag on, heavy as lead. What hurt the most was the loneliness inside me. Not the loneliness of physically being away from people, but an internal loneliness, of feeling like no one really understood what I was going through. Because on the outside, I smiled, pretended to be okay, followed the script that the world expected, but on the inside, I felt like a stranger to myself. It was at that moment, in the silence of that early morning, that for the first time I allowed myself to feel everything without rushing, without judgment. I stopped fighting what I was feeling and just felt the pain, the fear, the confusion. It was scary and liberating at the same time. That night was the beginning of an inner journey that I didn't know where it would take me, but that I had to take. Because in that darkness, I realized that what I called being lost was actually my own awakening. The awakening to the fact that I didn't need to fit into any mold, I didn't need to follow anyone. I needed to find myself. And that, I discovered, is not an easy or quick path. It is a road full of doubts, mistakes, fears, but also full of discovery, growth, and, above all, freedom. After that night, something inside me began to change, slowly, almost imperceptibly, but steadily. It wasn't a magic click, nor an instant solution, but a slow process of small achievements that accumulated and helped me breathe a little easier. The first of these achievements was simple, almost banal. I stopped trying to be what others expected me to be. It was a small but gigantic step for me. I began to realize that I no longer needed to fit into molds that didn't make sense, that I no longer needed to pretend that I had all the answers. It was liberating to accept that my journey would be unique, different from everyone else's, and that this was perfectly normal. Over time, I began to pay more attention to the things that made me feel alive, that brought a genuine sparkle to my eyes. Simple things like walking outside, feeling the wind on my face, listening to music that moved my soul. Little by little, these little sparks became light, showing me that there was a path, not a ready-made path, but a path that I could build. I also discovered that the solitude that used to scare me could be an ally. It gave me space to reflect, to listen to my own thoughts without the noise of the world trying to push me in directions that weren't mine. It was in the stillness of this inner space that I began to understand who I really was, with all my doubts, fears, and imperfections. I won't lie, the road didn't get any easier. There were moments of discouragement, of fear that I wasn't doing enough, of questioning whether it was all worth it. But each time I resisted those thoughts, I felt a little stronger. It was as if I was learning to trust myself, my intuition, and the unique rhythm of my life. It was a transformation that didn't come from outside, but from within. A process of healing and self-acceptance that taught me to embrace the unknown with courage, knowing that I don't need to have all the answers to move forward. Because, after all, life isn't about having total control, but about learning to dance with chaos, accept uncertainty, and be kind to yourself. Today, when I look back, I see that being lost was the first step to finding myself. That the confusion that once paralyzed me was, in fact, an invitation to create, reinvent, and be authentic. And that not following anyone is not a burden but a gift, the gift of being able to write my own story. This journey taught me that true freedom lies in accepting that we are not made to be copies, but originals. And that the most difficult path, that of being who we really are, is also the most beautiful and meaningful. If I could share a single truth that has changed my life forever, it would be this. Happiness is not found in following a predefined path, nor in achieving goals set by the world, but in living the authenticity of our own being, even if that means being lost to others. For a long time, I believed that happiness was out there, in achievements, in approval, in being recognized, in being part of groups and trends. I thought that following in the footsteps of someone who seemed to have the right formula was the only way to avoid mistakes, to avoid suffering, to be happy. But what I learned is that this external search is an illusion that only distances us from our essence. The real paradox of life is that in order to be found, you first have to lose yourself. To know who you are, you have to let go of expectations, labels, and certainties that are not yours. It is a scary process because letting go of control is always scary. But it is precisely in this letting go that true freedom lies. You can look back at your own history and realize that the times you felt the most fear or confusion were also the times you grew the most, the times you became the strongest and the most truthful. Because being lost doesn't mean being directionless. It means being in transformation. It's a state of transition between who you were and who you are becoming. And this transformation does not happen from the outside in, but from the inside out. There are no shortcuts, no ready-made recipes. What there is the courage to look in the mirror, even if you don't like what you see, and still choose to walk, choose to try, choose to be true to yourself. When we understand this, life changes its meaning. Realizing that you are not made to follow anyone else is actually a call to create. To create your own path, your own rhythm, your own rules. It is recognizing that your authenticity is the greatest value you can offer the world because no one else can be you. This realization opens a door that previously seemed locked. It frees you from the weight of comparison, pressure, and feelings of inadequacy. And it brings a new perspective, the perspective that every step you take, even if it seems uncertain, is a declaration of freedom and self-love. So sometimes being lost is not a sign of failure, but a sign of courage. Courage to not conform to what the world wants you to be. Courage to venture into the unknown, to seek a life that has meaning for you and not for others. It's as if you were a star that needs to distance itself from the light of others in order to shine with its own intensity. And this light, when it finally turns on, not only illuminates your path, but inspires others to find their own light as well. So true happiness is not a fixed destination. It is an ongoing process of being and becoming, of losing yourself and finding yourself, of embracing the complexity of your humanity without fear. Because it is in this complexity that the beauty of life resides, the mystery that makes us unique. When we stop trying to fit in and start creating, we become the protagonists of our story. No longer spectators or copies, but authors and artists of our existence. And life, with all its uncertainties, stops being a burden and becomes an adventure. An adventure worth taking because it is only in it that we find meaning. The meaning of being exactly who we were made to be, without excuses, without masks. When I look at everything I have experienced so far, I realize that life is a constant dance between chaos and order, between fear and courage, between losing and finding. And that this dance, however difficult it may be, is what makes us human, complete and true. The overcoming that really matters is not the one we show to the world in the form of great achievements or obvious successes. True overcoming is the one that happens inside us, in the silent battles we fight against doubt, against insecurity, against the fear of being who we really are. I know how hard it is to feel like you don't belong anywhere, that you don't have a defined path, that you're not following a ready-made manual for happiness or success. I've been there, and maybe you're there now too, feeling that anguish, that feeling of being lost in the middle of your own time. But I want to tell you, from the bottom of my heart, being lost is not the end of the road. It's the beginning. It's the space where old certainties fall away so new ones can grow. It's the moment when you can finally ask yourself what you really want, without rushing, without pressure, just with the courage to listen to your own heart. You may think that the lack of answers is a sign of failure, but I assure you that it is quite the opposite. It is an invitation to create. To create a path that makes sense to you, that respects your time, your dreams, your imperfections. And when you accept that you are not made to follow anyone, that there is no ready-made mold for you to fit into, everything changes. You begin to realize that you have the power in your hands to decide who you want to be, what you want to do, how you want to live. This responsibility may seem heavy, I know, but it is also the greatest liberation you can experience. Because when you stop trying to please others and start pleasing yourself, when you stop trying to be what the world wants and start being what you are, life becomes lighter, truer, more yours. I'm not saying it's easy, quite the opposite. It's a daily struggle, a constant exercise in patience, compassion, and courage. But it's a struggle that's worth every step, because every step is an act of self-love, an act of respect for your essence. And in this process, you will discover that you are not alone, that there are other people who also feel lost, who are also searching, who are also creating, that this journey is not a lonely path, but an invisible web that connects all who choose to be authentic. So, don't be afraid to make mistakes, to stumble, to change direction. Don't be afraid to feel, to question, to doubt, because these moments are the fertile soil where your true life begins to grow. You are a unique being with a light that only you can light. And that light doesn't have to be bright for the whole world. It just has to be true for you. When you embrace this truth, the fear of being lost disappears. And what remains is the certainty that even without a map, even without a manual, even without certainties, you are exactly where you need to be. On the path that you are creating, step by step, with courage and authenticity. And that is the greatest victory anyone can achieve. If this video spoke to you, if you felt that you are not alone in this search for meaning and authenticity, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Here, we will continue walking together, exploring these deep questions about who we are and how we can truly live without masks and without rushing. Like this video so more people can find this message. Share it with anyone you think might also be feeling lost, like you once did. Let's create a community where being different, being unique, is celebrated and valued. And don't forget to leave your comment below. I really want to know which part of the story touched you the most, what challenge you are facing now, or simply exchange ideas about this journey of being who we really are. Life isn't about following pre-made paths. It's about creating your own path with courage, self-love, and authenticity. So, allow yourself this freedom, and let's discover together the power of being who you were born to be. Thanks for being here. See you in the next video.